Terry Garrison. I'm the COO of Multicopter Warehouse. We're a dealer and distributor out of Colorado. We have a huge booth over there. It's a little hard to miss. We got Jim Bowers over here, the founder and director of Swarm, which is a search and rescue. He has a fan. Yay. One.
More than me.
Nobody clapped for me, Jim, so you're one ahead of me, so you're good. He also runs the very popular Demon Seed YouTube channel. If you've ever seen his ramblings on different products, he is very popular out there on the YouTubes. And Garth Bruce with OneView and Seattle Mountain Rescue. And Terry Perisher of Straight Up Imaging LLC. So that's my crowd I've got up here. We're going to go through a bunch of questions, and I'm going to have each, usually 2 at a time, respond to those questions and answer those. If you guys have a question that relates to what we're talking about, feel free and ask as we go instead of holding them to the end. I'm okay with that. We'll try and make it interactive and so that you don't have to kind of hold it in your brain until the very end. So our first one is, what are the typical uses seen today when using a UAS for SAR missions? I'll start with Jim.
Gee.
I'll just throw them right in the fire.
Well, you know, are mics working?
Yeah.
Can everybody hear us okay? Yep. As far as search and rescue goes, I mean, the Swarm organization was started as a hobbyist group. So you don't necessarily need, while it's, you know, recommended that you have a professional platform, we have found victims with Phantom 1s. So, you know, while you want to build the best system that you possibly can, it doesn't mean that a hobbyist can't get involved in search and rescue. Now with the new Part 107, that makes it a lot more difficult to do. So the Swarm network is actually, we're sort of retooling now in order to meet those requirements.
Are you seeing most typically it's just searching as a use case, going out and trying to find a victim or someone that's lost?
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the time it's searching. When it comes to drones, though, and I was a little bit surprised by this from the very beginning of Swarm. Swarm, by the way, stands for Search with an Aerial RC Multi-Rotor. And we found after the first year or so that most of the time it was a recovery. Because by the time a drone is called in, they've exhausted all of their other resources.
Because we're not getting called in soon enough.
Exactly.
And that is a big, big problem.
Yeah.
Okay, Terry, you want to add to that?
Yes. Let me see if this one's on. Nope. Doesn't sound like it. No?
There you go.
All right. So to answer this one, since, you know, a lot of people might, that's been in the business a while, especially ISR, might confused SAR with search and rescue or synthetic aperture radar. So here, when we use the acronym SAR, we're using search and rescue, just to make that clear. So what I see, and this is years of application, years of trying to educate the public and private companies, including DoD, on the use of UAS from Group 5 all the way down to Group 1, is the uses that we'll see today are long-endurance, dependable COTS equipment, contractor off the shelf, includes sensors, used within the constraints of regulation, technology, and cost. And I had to say that because we are limited to what's available and what's familiar enough for people to try to integrate on the simplest level into the national airspace today. So the typical uses you'll see of small UAS, and the reason why I'm focusing on small UAS right now, which is basically Group 2 and below, 55 pounds and below, is because that's the easiest thing to integrate and put your head around and to buy afford, and use for public purposes, any purpose, in this case, search and rescue. So the things that you'll buy are simple, popular off-the-shelf items, including sensors, which through time are now, because there's more focus on the time and money for payload sensors, you'll find more small form factor sensors. So to answer that question in an even longer way is contractor off-the-shelf equipment that's in its simplest form today that will quickly change within 2 years to be more professional grade, and there'll be a huge differentiation between professional and hobby drones.
Great. Okay, the new 107 rules, as Jim mentioned, are in some ways making it easier, and in other ways making it more difficult. It's kind of a catch-22 in here. Before 107, most of the search and rescue teams or the different departments would have to have someone who's already a private pilot. They'd have to have a Section 333. They would have to file COAs and SOPs, and it was just this avalanche of data that they had to put together. 107 does make that a lot easier. We get away from the private pilot's license, but at the same time, there's some difficulties to it. You want to go ahead and do you have any feedback on how the 107 is affecting the SAR operations?
Yeah. Yeah, so I can throw a little bit on that. Just for background for me, so Seattle Mountain Rescue, we do a lot of rescues. We do, let's see, it was 143 last year. So about every 3 days we've got something going. When the 911 call goes out, we get called. So it's not an issue of, you know, anything that kind of stops us from getting in the way to actually doing it. The Part 107, no, it's actually of no relevance to us at all. The guys that we work or help, which is the King County Sheriff's Office in Seattle, they could have had their exception, 333 exception filed a long time ago if they wanted to, but they never did. So, yeah, that's the short answer.
Are your UAS operators, are they flying under 333s?
Yeah, so we do. We have several people flying under 333, but the county has not taken the step to adopt it because of political reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
So it's,
one of the things that I see a problem with today is the 107 rule of no night flying. And while you can get an exception for that, you can get a waiver for it, it's a very specific area for a very specific time. We can't yet get, like in my case, all of Douglas County for the next year. I can get within 3 kilometers of any GPS location. So that's a problem. There is supposed to be an emergency waiver system coming into place soon that should help that. What are the swarm guys seeing with this right now?
With
the 107?
Yeah, well, with the 107, the swarm network is made up of about 6,300 volunteer drone pilots around the world. And we don't have a level of expertise that these guys have to, a threshold that they can become a member. Anybody can join Swarm. Now, whether or not we'll ever use them is a whole different matter because we vet everybody that we call out on a mission. Now, with the new 107 regulation that's come along, we are now in the process of retooling the entire organization. We've had to rewrite our SOP, our standard operating procedures, and we won't send a pilot out that doesn't have a 333 or a 107. Where in the past, you know, we would either send them out as a 333 or in some cases as hobbyists back in the day.
Yeah.
Can I add to that, Gary?
Sure.
All right. I am a military fixed and rotary wing pilot, and I have FAA commercial IFR ticket both for multiple rotary wing and fixed wing, and I've commanded multiple UAS in the military, and I still deploy for government, non-government agencies with new large platforms worldwide. So the reason why I say that is one of my commands in the Army while I was still active duty was the first Predator commander, which at that time we called Warrior Alpha. Now there's more Gray Eagles than that, but our Predator, or Warrior Alpha, was capable of carrying 4 Hellfires and had some redundant avionics compared to the Air Force Predator, which carries 2 Hellfires. The reason why I say that is because the Army had E2s, so people that have been in the Army for 2 years, young enlisted folks that are 19 years old, firing Hellfires off the rails in combat. So when we flew pre-mission or pre-combat training in the National Airspace here in the U.S. and abroad, they functioned well. They functioned because they had the right aptitude people, they had the right professional young men and women in the seat, and they had regulations that they adhered to and were enforced very strictly. So they did a very successful job without being pilots, not only piloting the Air Force, but using kinetic activity in the best and worst way, depending on your perspective in combat. So when that stretches over into qualifications here in the National Airspace, I've never agreed, and a lot of people, there's probably quite a bit of uproar when I say this, I've never agreed that you had to be a qualified aviator to fly unmanned systems, but that was a very good way of initializing standards for the FAA and public enterprises to help establish standards and get the right folks trained safely to utilize UAS within the national airspace. And the 107 has eased up and now lets you have what a driver's license for a Class 3 flight physical in lieu of, and then you know, in a standardized test in lieu of having a sport pilot or greater, which I think is brilliant, and I think that the process came around just perfectly so that it made the public understand and have confidence that the standards are set with a lot of thought and a lot of regulation in mind, safety in mind, and will soften once people understand the use and the proper use and qualifications of unmanned systems.
Does anyone here have already passed their 107 test?
Wow.
That I was not expecting. Wow, congratulations.
Neither.
Me too. Haven't got my
the
temp yet.
107, for those of you that don't know,
Wow.
the 107 is not an easy test. It's going
Well, hold on. How many thought it was really easy? Yeah, 1. Okay.
it's going to weed out a lot of people that shouldn't be flying drones. Let's put it that way.
I had to read up on my sectionals. It had been about 20 years. So
That's a good thing.
yeah,
It is a good thing.
I'm 100% behind it. I mean, a lot of people would argue and say it's not relevant to what we do. I'm going to disagree.
Well, the weed out process is a very important piece. You're serious about it or you're not. If you're serious about it, then read up on it and apply regulation and standards for safety accordingly.
And over in the exhibit hall, there's a couple of companies offering 107 training. I would take advantage of that. I didn't, and I still passed, but I'm not going to tell you my grade.
But it was over 70%.
It was over 70%. Yes, it was. It's all that matters. What do they call the guy in medical school who gets the lowest grade? Doctor, right? Yeah. What are the
Question over there, sir.
What's that? Not entirely. As a business, I could get a 333 waiver, but I would have to hire a pilot who has a pilot's license. So they don't have to be one and the same. With the 107, it is now me that gets the license and me that has to either fly or be supervising the person who is at the controls.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to Terry's point, there's not a lot of people younger than us who do a lot better than we do.
Maybe. We'll see. I've been flying for a long time, but still, the aeronautical stuff on the test was it was challenging. I will say that. On to the next question. What are the biggest obstacles a department faces when starting to implement a UAS program? Terry, you want to?
Yes,
Start
thank you. And this is just to let you know, both with my company, Straight Up Imaging, And the people I represent and work for, I work for Northrop Grumman, and I have 6 years today is when I started with them. Right after I retired, I started with them, and so I was their Land Forces Business Development Manager. I was in charge of integrating and developing UAS for Special Operations, Army, Marine Corps, and eventually I led the charge on integrating UAS into public ops in the United States. So giving you a little bit of background there and the integration of small UAS that I have with my personal company, Straight Up Imaging, I've learned a lot. And this isn't my opinion. This is what I have learned on integrating UAS, large scale and small scale, into public entities like education institutions, police, fire, first responder, emergency ops, all the above, search and rescue, is that it's the biggest hindrance is public perception. So, and we've all of us have been around the block. We're all, even though we think UAS is advanced, we're still on the bottom rung, and everybody in this room and up here on stage are pioneers. It is all up to us on developing 107 further and developing UAS, both engineering and integration. So public perception was it, to the point that with CAL FIRE, for Group 3 UAS, made it all the way up to Sacramento, 2-star level. The public, political, and this isn't negative, I couldn't think of the word, the political influences put the kibosh on furthering the integration of UAS in California because of public perception and their constituency. So the politicians told the actual tip of the spear operators, you know, the people in uniform out there fighting the fires, no, now's not a good time because of public perception. And that's the greatest hindrance. Second greatest hindrance is the public not understanding, the users of the unmanned systems not really understanding what's available, and it's too difficult to use. If all of y'all remember taking small drones, buying it out of the box, Phantom, whatever, it is almost overwhelming, especially when it flies off, you never see it again. You don't know what happened, but it happens, and if it hasn't happened, it's like owning a motorcycle. You will crash, or you haven't crashed, but you will crash eventually. Same thing with the drone. If you haven't had a fly off, you will. And you'll scratch your head going, man, maybe I should have understood that more. So it's us as pioneers that are obligated to build more autonomy into these things, which means making them more easier for people to understand and use, and put less thought into the error imposed by men and women flying them.
Jim, you have anything to add to that?
My experience with fire departments and law enforcement when I go in and demonstrate what we could do with the UAS system was their biggest fear was privacy and liability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those two right there would just put the kibosh on bringing UAS into the, and we never wanted to call them drones to begin with. It was the mass media that shoved that down our throats.
Negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that public perception was a media-driven thing right from the get-go. You know, we were trying to get multi-rotor or UAS or SUAS, or a buddy of mine calls them quad choppers, or anything but drones. But that's where we ended up, and so it's just kind of a, you know, that word drone just drives fear into my next door neighbor who's come screeching up to my house a couple of times.
Yeah. Last year, I spent a number of evenings with the Douglas County Sheriff going to town hall meetings, because his brilliant idea was to go after community buy-in before launching his program, so to speak. That is a bad joke. Well, at each one of these meetings, there would be two people, not the same at each one. There's always two people in any crowd who would lose their flipping minds. So we started calling them the nutters, and it was bad. You would have a mom in tears screaming, "I don't want someone to be able to watch my daughter." It's like, you know, there's airplanes and helicopters flying over your house, right? You live in the flight path of the frickin' airport.
Yeah, there's no
This
difference
is no
between
difference.
unmanned and manned. The only thing difference with unmanned is we keep it up longer.
You know, it was crazy, the feedback. And this set our sheriff's department back at least a year in getting their program up and running. Because it was probably better to ask for forgiveness than permission, because that backfired big time, as I told them it would. Which, surprisingly, on this question, my next question was, how should we go about getting past community opposition? Because that is probably one of the biggest ones. You want to start with this one?
Yeah, so I guess to the point, it's about public perception and turning that tide and making people aware and understand what the technology is and what it can do. In search and rescue, it's a lot easier to do that. So for our organization, SeattleMountainRescue.org, we are like big time into the social media. We publish, we post, we, send out Twitter notifications, and we work with the local news stations, King 5 News, put together programs to highlight the usefulness, to change and educate the public. And that's been a huge part of it. Our community outreach program, when we go out and talk to people, you bet, we're talking about this now as a part of it. And of course, a few years ago, we never even mentioned this. Those are the big things that we're doing.
I will say, we fight a lot of the same battle because we have a store. It's in a weird city that's very conservative, and people would say, well, you opened a drone store in Castle Rock? You guys are crazy. So what we do, a lot of the same thing, tons of community outreach. Every Wednesday, I post a picture called Where Am I Wednesday? And it's just a straight down aerial shot of something in the city that whoever guesses it first kind of gets to come in and pick out a little toy drone, Always posting positive stuff like that, always posting aerial shots of the city, and people just go nuts over it, and it helps to get over that stigma that they're bad. Jim, what's been the experience with you in trying to get past some of the opposition from the communities?
Educating the public, that's key right there. In my community, I'm an artist. The only reason I got into drones to begin with was to shoot documentary films with them. And so for my community, I did a 4 seasons documentary, and it was an aerial tour of the community, and the community just went ape over this thing. And so from that point on, I was the drone guy, and I won a lot of people over because they saw that drones can actually be used for something other than peeking over somebody's back fence.
Or target practice.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. You've got to show them all of the different things that drones can do, not just search and rescue. We're working on a new technology now that is just amazing, people, where a ski resort has an avalanche. They dispatch a drone. The drone flies over the avalanche area. Within 15 minutes of that avalanche, and a sensor on board the drone is just pinging cell phones buried in the snow. Mm-hmm. So you can longitude and latitude locate those victims within 10 or 15 minutes, as opposed to going out there and poking holes in the snow.
Yeah.
So the technology is just
We're still
racing.
waiting on the actual the beacon, the avalanche beacon detectors to get small enough and be integrated into the systems. That's coming. We're probably less than a year away from that. But the cell phone detector, everyone's got their cell phone on them, and it doesn't have to have service. It will still pick up the signal from the phone. So it's a huge, huge step forward.
We have the technology available now, it's just there's no requirement for it. So now that there's more attention driven toward the time and money focused on these small form factor capabilities, it's going to happen quicker than ever. And the only thing I'd like to add, Carrie, is what Jim said. It is education. Even though my company does clean sheet design and prototyping and build of professional grade fixed wing and rotary wing, and I do consulting, 85% of what I do is education. And that's important because what we do, everybody, again, in this room, as pioneers, it's our responsibility to get this thing started, not only financially for our own business sake, but respectfully and professionally, so that we build the capability on a safety scale that needs to be adhered to. And along with education, one of the things that I've noticed when it comes to integrating, especially in public institutions like education, is be overt, not covert. Get people to take ownership. So this works 100% of the time, whether or not I'm getting permission to fly within 5 miles of a military installation, is if you get them to take ownership of your development, you get them to understand through education, and you be overt, not covert, then you'll be amazed how many people want to jump on board and make things easier for you because they want to be a part of what is going to be tremendous. The growth is absolutely going to skyrocket in the very near future. So education, get people to take ownership of your development, and you'll go far.
Yeah,
And-
imagine having a town hall meeting in your own community, and we're doing this in my community, and it's just called Drones Over Colfax. And just that title is going to pack the town hall meeting. Because
Sure
there's
will.
going to be people for it, there's going to be people against it. But you do this educational outreach where you tell them about all of these different things that drones can be used for and the technology that's available for search and rescue and for advanced fire surveillance and all those sorts of uses. And then they come on board real quick, and you can change their mindset.
And you absolutely must publish every positive thing that happens. Period. There's no exception to that. Every positive thing that you do, you need to have published. You need to get it in the news. You need to have it on your Facebook page. You need to have it in your Twitter feed, your Instagram, whatever social media you use, you need to be in front of it when something positive happens.
Yeah, exactly. And all you're trying to do is to counter all the negative press of that plastic garbage bag that hit that airliner in the UK. So there's always going to be a lot of bad press out there about drones because the media just loves it. They're all over it. So anything good you do with the drone, talk about it.
Big time. Okay, our next question. When a department wants to start small, what would your recommendations be? I'll start with Terry.
Okay, let me see if I made any notes on it. So, well, let me just go off the top of my head with true experience. So when a department wants to go small, usually that means that they're just trying, they're sampling the water. That means they don't have any money and they don't have any public or inter-institution support. That's what I found. So when they want to start small, what I recommend is they buy the contractor off the shelf, the more inexpensive, dependable drones that are out there for people. The Phantoms, the Uniques, something that actually is pretty advanced that they can easily integrate, not a great cost, and something that is easier to swallow for the people that they're flying around because it's been around for a while, so it's something a little bit more mature that is somewhat dependable depending on how you use it. So start small, cost-wise, and with familiar equipment. The biggest thing that I found is once you get advanced equipment that costs more money, and it's a little, even though it's just as easy to fly, because advanced aircraft that I'm concentrating on, I'm taking the error out of people. I'm making it, we're even writing our own software for GCS in flight. We're trying to take as many processes out of the operator as possible so that aircraft and the system in general can correct its own flight path, can provide safety functions and features that generally rest in the operator's hands. And the public really isn't ready for that yet because it costs more money and it's more difficult to understand, and it uses advanced sensors that only goes back to people going, oh, so you can see through walls and see me undressing. And it does have little mini hellfires on it, huh? And you'd be amazed. I'm sure we've all heard something like that. I know I'm rambling on right now, but over to you, gents.
Garth?
The only thing I can add there is there's really no substitute for being a good pilot, and being a good pilot means practice. So even before I would go out and buy some, inexpensive commercial drone, I would buy even a cheaper drone, and I would fly it and I would trash it. And then I'd get really good at that. And then I'd go to a fixed
Really good at trashing it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then I would go to a fixed wing and I would do the same thing again and get really good at that. And then I would take the next step. Because those skills, you just got to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, I tell novice pilots all the time, go out and get these little, if you've never flown a drone before, go to acesdeals.biz.
Wow, there's your plug. All right.
I know.
I was waiting for it,
Told
Jim.
you to do it for you, Peter. Anyway, just get from anywhere. Carolina drones. I'll throw one in there for them.
Hello.
Get a little
Hello.
nano 3D.
Hello. Hello.
Just those,
Hello.
just those little bitty, tiny drones, and you can crash them all day long. But what you're learning is the axis, because the controls on them are just like the Phantoms or the Uniques or whatever. They fly exactly the same. So you can learn to fly toward yourself. That's the biggest mistake
Nose in.
novice pilots make, is they can go out there and do figure eights all the time, but as soon as they turn toward themselves, controls are backwards and they're pretty much screwed. So learn to fly one of those little mini quadcopters, and then like you said, if you have a department that wants to get into UAS, get a Phantom or the Unique Typhoon H, and they are literally autonomous. All you've got to do is on your Google Earth map, tell it, I want you to go there, then I want you to go there, then I want you to come back here, and then just hit go. And it's just going to go do all that for you. You don't even have to touch the radio.
But nothing beats experience.
But, yeah, at the same time, you need to learn how to fly. Like he said, get a drone, then get a fixed wing, and learn how to fly with ailerons and rudder and all that sort of thing, and understand aerodynamics, and then get up there into an expensive system.
Well, autonomy is the key. So, the aircraft that I build are primarily flown off tablets or phones. So that way, the aircraft can fly itself, and you don't have to worry about orientation. But that's the next step that people are developing. Just like Northrop Grumman, every one of their aircraft, and they have thousands of them, is all keyboard and mouse. Every one of them. So it takes that error out of the individual and gives consistency. But that's one of the things that we need to focus on.
Yep. For a well-rounded UAS implementation for a search and rescue team, what equipment should be available? One platform that fits everything, a couple, a large, a small? Is there some recommendations on what a department should start with? To kind of
I definitely think not an all-in-one platform, because different drones are good for different things. You've got your thermal imaging camera on one drone, and you've got an FPV search camera, high resolution, dual operator, where one guy's flying the drone over a heavily wooded area, and you need a dedicated pilot, but then you're also trying to look around down there in the trees, so you've got a separate camera operator. And so depending on the equipment that's on the drone, you might have different platforms for sure.
Mm-hmm. Garth? You wanna add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. That was great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with that too. There's usually not one platform that can do everything. It's usually a combination of different platforms, from long duration to long range to lifting capacity to thermal imaging. All these, and it's very difficult to put all that onto one platform today.
Yeah. If you want to look at long range, then a quadcopter might not be your solution. A fixed wing aircraft might do a 4.5-mile waypoint search, where it's just completely autonomous. You use a waypoint application, and you just set your waypoints to fly a lawnmower pattern, and you cover 4.5 square miles and just stitch all that imagery together. And then if you don't spot your target during the search, you've got all your rescue team putting eyes on that footage after the search.
Last weekend, I did a 43-acre search with our sheriff's department using an Inspire 1, and it took 8 batteries to do 43 acres. With a fixed wing, it possibly could have stayed up the entire time and done it in one mission. Mm-hmm. So very different uses for different types of aircraft.
Back when I started about 13, 14 years ago, integrating UAS for the government and the military, the services, it was all about the aircraft, and the payloads or sensors were secondary or tertiary. So everybody wanted the aircraft. They wanted the crack, which was full motion video. And then fast forward, now it's mostly about sensors, aircraft secondly, the truck that carries it. What I love about commercial enterprise or public here in the United States and abroad again, is the focus now is what can it do for me? It's a truck, it's just a tool to go out and fly, and we need to remember it's just a tool. So it's all about the sensors, and you build the aircraft around the sensors. And again, small form factor would allow a more modular approach to UAS activity. One of the aircrafts that I make is modular. So it's our fixed wing and rotary wing share the same architecture, so it's plug and play, literally, IP-based. And it has a universal rail that any payload that you put on the rotary wing, you can simply slide off, put it on the fixed wing, and it recognizes it on the fly. So it's modular, it's plug and play, it's universal, and that's what people want with the smaller payload. They don't care about the truck. They don't care about how it looks. Does it fly a long time? Is it dependable? Is it safe? Is it somewhat inexpensive? Even if it's expensive, is it something that I can use the truck for years, but as the payloads progress and the sensors progress, can I swap out the sensors? The answer is yes. The technology is there now. The battery focus on extended life is now, it's going to go through the roof, thanks to Tesla and other groups. But that capability with a modular aircraft, modular payloads is the next step, and I think is the key. You have a question, sir?
Yeah. There was a question out there?
Yeah, I'm willing to get told it's late, but it's on the technology. Is any of the platforms integrating some of the emergency management tools that we're already using for things like common operating picture and sharing it?
Some is the answer. There's not a lot of solid integration today. There's bits and pieces. So one example is flying the Inspire. I have an HDMI output. They were running a cable into their command center, and so they had it on one of their displays. That's about the extent of it today. That's going to continue to improve, especially with products from DJI, because there's a software development kit available, and I see people that are working on the software packages to do that integration, and that's going to be coming very, very soon. On other platforms, it's not so easy. Unique doesn't have an open platform to develop your own apps, so that's going to be a more difficult one. On ones that are being custom built, that they're not reliant on the bigger manufacturers out there, I'm sure that integration is coming as well.
Open source hardware and software gives that maturity that people expect when they initially use the aircraft. Unique, DJI, there's going to be a big divide between those hobby aircraft that he was just identifying and professional that uses existing systems that are robust, that are advanced in a unique array or unique platform that's just as dependable, but built for the mission, built for professional use. But you can talk to me afterwards. I've actually taken quite a few sensors that the public uses for search and rescue, et cetera. I've taken the existing sensors and integrated into our aircraft. So more than what he was saying, yes, that is done, and I can give you a few examples afterwards.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, is there a danger in going with products that are too cheap and may present reliability issues? And I'm going to say absolutely. There are products out there that I would never possibly recommend because they're just not going to be reliable. They're durable or replaceable or fixable, or I could go through a number of different things as to why certain platforms may not be a good choice, other than possibly, as Jim mentioned earlier, as training tools that you're going to beat up. And actually, on the next slide, we're going to talk about training just a little bit. We do have a handful of slides here. I want to try and get through them all, and we're spending a little bit longer on each one than I had hoped for. So we're going to try and keep moving here a little bit. But Garth, you guys have a good training program for the different pilots. What does a good training program look like for a department?
How many people have a Section 333 here? Oh, quite a few. Okay, you guys know what you had to go through to put that together. There's quite a bit of documentation, your checklist, right, your maintenance log. Of course, all that's part of it. And the training program that we use, you know, is just integrated into our existing training program. So what that is we've got base OLs and in-town operations leader, and so a lot of the training with UAV is educating everybody in our org as what the UAV is, how it's used, what it's, you know, capable of, what we need, what we don't need for different missions. So that's a huge part of the training. It's just integration into existing training. So we have trainings every week. We train on something, and it's just integrated into that with all the documentation that you would expect.
Great. We're just going to keep moving here. This is a good question, one of my favorites here. What are the current hardware limitations that hinder UAS operations? I'll throw this to Terry first.
Thank you. I could talk for 3 hours on that alone, but I won't. I'll keep it under a minute.
Battery.
Just to let you know on your question you had earlier, which was I already forgot.
Can you go too cheap?
Oh, absolutely. And like it or not, everybody in this room has an influence on how UAS are integrated into the environment right now. All of us do. And if you go too cheap, people are waiting on the sidelines to go, see, it's unsafe, it's not good. So when you integrate, make sure you do it professionally and right for all of our sake.
Thank you, Terry.
You are
That's a
a
good
representative of everybody in this room and this whole institution, and you have a responsibility, like it or not. If you don't want the responsibility, please don't do it. All right, because like it or not, you're representing everybody, commercially and hobbyists. So as far as the hardware, yes, there are many hardware solutions out there that are not yet small enough to put it on an affordable UAS that's good for exploitation. But that's changing super quickly with advanced battery or payload systems or power systems, the reduction in swap, like I was talking about, size, weight, and power. And the demand for certain requirements is growing, and you're going to see payload restrictions based on cost primarily, technology second. Kind of drive each other, but I'll move on.
Jim?
Well, I'm still not completely convinced yet that the drone industry as a whole is going to survive. I mean, I think on the commercial side, search and rescue and all that, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But as far as the hobbyist is concerned, I think it's a little bit sort of fatty. It's kind of like singing telegrams. It's going to wane at some point, I hope. So
Wow, that was out of left field. Okay.
So that
It's
we
not where I
can
thought you
use
were
them
gonna
on a professional level. If you notice, the drone industry is right now moving toward, you know, first when they came out with everything was radio controlled and you had to learn how to fly them. Well, now the industry is moving towards selfie drones, where you don't even get a radio control.
Oh, don't
It's
get
all
me
done
started on that.
On your
Don't
damn
get me
cell
started
phone.
on that.
You don't need to know how to fly them anymore. They're just gonna take off next to your spaghetti, take your picture, and then land again. So that's where the drone industry is headed. That and FPV racing, you know, that's a big sport. You know, I don't even know if that will make the Olympics one day. But,
I think it will.
We'll see about that one.
yeah.
What technologies are on the horizon that will make an impact on search and rescue operations? I would definitely, in my case, what are the things I look at are the FLIR cameras getting smaller and more affordable, the lift capacities, being able to get payloads out to people. Those are the simple ones. Jim mentioned the sensors that are being used to ping people that are in an avalanche. So there's a lot of technologies that are right here, but are there any that are kind of out there a little ways that are going to have an impact?
Yeah, you know, for us, a lot of it is the visual object recognition systems. You know, these things have gotten just amazing potential for processing on board. Love to see that come down the road pretty soon. So you can just feed it and say, look, we're looking for this object or this person or this clothing or this color, and it just, you know, it knows and it'll do it. That's pretty sweet. Terrain following is another big one for us too. Love to have more capability in regards to that. I think that'll change the game for us, and it's here now. The technology's in place. It's just an implementation factor. 360 avoidance would be pretty sweet too. We do a lot of steep angle cliff searching, and there's always branches and various stuff in the way. So having a little extra help, you know, in regards to the obstacle avoidance, full 360 be sweet. I don't know, what else am I
Yeah,
missing?
no, you hit on all the three major ones. Right now, the 360 obstacle avoidance is it's not really out there. You know, it is available in the hobbyist drones. You can get like the Typhoon H or the Phantom 4, but they only have a range on them that's kind of out front and to the sides a little bit. If you're backing up, you're toast. The other was LiDAR, which is going to give you that terrain awareness. Right now, if you're at 100 feet off the ground and you fly straight ahead and there's a hill coming and you're flying a waypoint autonomous mission, you're going to run right into that parking garage or whatever's out in front of you. So that technology needs to come along. What was the first one that you mentioned? Was
Terrain?
No,
360?
landslide detection or something you said, or obstacle?
Oh, I was just working.
Oh, the
I worked with
object
the,
detection.
with the FBI here about 3 or 4 months ago in Sacramento, and we're working on a drone that's a forward surveillance sensor for WMDs. They wanted a drone that'll just go out ahead of their bomb squad or their management team on just suspicious backpack or whatever. And that drone can go in there first and actually sniff the object for explosives or certain chemical makeups or any of that. So the technology's it was image recognition that you were talking about. That's available right now on the hobbyist level. You can pick your object out there. Let's say you're doing search and rescue, and once you find the subject and they're wandering around out there, all you've got to do is draw a box around them, and that drone will just stay right with them. And
You know,
so
Karen,
the technology is already there. So it's just getting better and better. It's
I
kind
know-
of on a beta level right now, but it's getting better.
I know we're over time, but I know y'all about ready to chant more. So I'll give you just a little bit more. Every piece of technology that's available right now will become small enough to use on Group 1 UAS, which is 25 pounds and under. So what technology is on the horizon? All of it. And let me give you one simple technology that's still a hindrance for first responders today, especially firefighters out in the suck that are in between the ravines trying to fight fires, is comm relay, communication problems. Today, they're out there losing folks because they're in between the ravines and they can't talk to each other on the radios and there's no cell phone connection. So a small drone that is being deployed actually uses comm relay capability. Simple thing that's available today.
Fantastic. I know we got some people in the audience that have done some interesting stuff. There's John Jacobson. Where are you? Yep, right over there. He's working with New Jersey lifeguards.
Yeah, on the Jersey Shore, Ocean County and Monmouth counties have asked us to come in and take a look at what we can do, or what drones can do on the Jersey Shore to map and track beach erosion, take care of issues like destruction on the beach after like Storm Sandy.
Lifeguards,
Erosion.
Yeah.
shark
Yeah.
surveillance,
And hellfires to blow them up.
hellfires.
Fantastic. I love hearing good stories like that. I'm just going to have one last one. I'm going to let everyone chime in on this one. What would be your best piece of advice to a department that wants to look at using a UAS? I'll start with Jim.
Well, want to start with it, I would start with public perception. You know, first, let your community know what you're planning to do, and then educate the community beforehand and, you know, tell them what you're going to do with it and why you want to do it that way before you actually put these things into play.
But unlike the way our sheriff's department did it, where they went out to specifically ask for permission from the community, you need to say, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is our data retention plan. This is our privacy plan. Everything needs to be in place to answer the questions that the community is going to pose.
Right.
Otherwise,
you want to let them know that this is all it's going to be used for. It's not going to be used for anything other, you know, than search and rescue or for beach erosion, like John brought up, whatever. But they need to be comfortable with the fact that this drone is not going to get out of control. You know what I mean?
Garth?
Within its law enforcement or whatever unit.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing a good job of covering that one. If you can throw in like pictures of, you know, dogs and puppies and kittens, you get twice the traffic.
especially kittens playing the piano, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kittens playing the-
Somehow, right? Yeah.
Dogs using toilets or whatever. Terry?
Education and collaboration. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Oh, you got a question over here? Sure.
I wanted to add a comment of the last question. We have developed already a drone, it's called a drone in Argentina. It's a drone that I can make it take off from here from my cell phone. It has a 4G connection. And what it does is it takes off, it does the whole grid, and it comes back and sends all the pictures. And it sends the pictures from a RGB camera or a thermal camera. And we're using it now with different national parks in Argentina and also with fire brigades. And I think that's one of the new technologies coming, which is drones that are really autonomous. And not just autonomous in the sense that connect the battery and make it drop on its own, but also charging on its own and being able to control it from far away.
All that exists now, charging pads where it lands, it does everything. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Just one last question. Is there any technology on the horizon for solar powering?
No. You can't get enough power to power the copters or even charge them. It's
They're
way
trying.
too much of a
Fixing it,
power
you
draw.
can.
It's
Fuel
not out there
cells.
yet.
Fuel cells are going to be the next one, or small generators that can be on top that can provide a couple of hours worth of runtime. But solar is decades away from being there. Okay, I want to thank my panelists. Thank you, guys.